Remember, Jaleel White. His darkest secret will leave you in shock. He made America laugh for nearly a decade, the glasses, the suspenders, the squeaky voice. But behind every did I do, that was a young man slowly losing himself to fame. Jaleel White. The face of Steve Urkel wasn't just a sitcom star. He was a prisoner of perfection battling rumors, heartbreak, and an image he could never escape. What really happened to the boy who became a legend too soon? Stay tuned, because the truth behind his rise and fall will change the way you see your favorite childhood icon. You're watching Legends of Black Excellence. Let's uncover the untold story. When fame comes too early. Before the world knew the words, "Did I do that?" there was simply Jaleel Ahmad White, a bright, curious boy from Pasadena, California, with a smile that could light up a room. Born on November 27, 1976, to Michael, a successful dentist, and Gail, a fiercely devoted mother who would soon become his manager. Jaleel grew up in a home that valued education and discipline. While other children played on the sidewalk, Gail enrolled her son in acting classes, guiding him toward the television world she believed he was destined for. By the time he was 3, he was already appearing in commercials for major brands, mimicking lines from adults who were twice his height. To outsiders, he was a prodigy in miniature form, but to his family he was still just a boy, learning to smile on command. Hollywood noticed. During the 1980s, the small screen boom created endless opportunities for child actors. Jaleel's charisma stood out. His eyes sparkled with a natural ease that many trained performers struggled to fake. By 8, he had landed a guest appearance on The Jeffersons, and casting directors began to whisper that the young Californian had something special. The defining moment seemed to come in 1984 when he was invited to audition for The Cosby Show, the most anticipated sitcom in America. The role was Rudy Huxtable, written at the time as the youngest son of the Huxtable family. Jaleel nailed the audition. The producers loved him. His family prepared to move to New York for filming. For a few fleeting days, it seemed destiny had already chosen its star. Then fate changed with a single phone call. Bill Cosby, the show's creator and creative force, decided Rudy should be a girl to better reflect his real-life family dynamics. That small rewrite erased Jaleel's big break. The role went to Keshia Knight Pulliam, who would go on to charm audiences as the youngest Huxtable child. Jaleel, only 8 years old, sat in silence while adults tried to explain how television worked, that a single decision could rewrite someone's dream. His mother later recalled him crying quietly in the audition room, too proud to sob aloud. Hollywood had closed one door, but neither of them knew that another much larger was about to open. 5 years later, ABC was developing a modest family sitcom called Family Matters. The show's writers needed a nerdy neighbor for a single episode, a throwaway character named Steve Urkel. When Jaleel, now 12, stepped into the role, everything changed. The glasses, suspenders, and nasal laugh were meant as a gag, yet his performance exploded beyond expectation. Viewers loved him instantly. Ratings soared. Producers rewrote the entire show, turning the Winslow family's story into the Urkel Show. At 14, Jaleel was earning over $100,000 per episode and had become a household name, a pop culture phenomenon whose image appeared on lunchboxes and action figures. America adored Steve Urkel, but Jaleel White, the boy beneath the glasses, was already vanishing behind the character. The darkest secret in this early chapter of his life wasn't crime or scandal. It was the quiet sacrifice hidden beneath laughter. The cost of early fame was invisibility, being seen by millions but recognized by none. Behind every punchline there was a child who had lost the chance to grow slowly, naturally, freely. What the world remembered as comedy was for him the beginning of a lifelong struggle, the paradox of being both loved and trapped by a role he could never escape. The price of childhood stardom. Fame, when it comes too early, doesn't feel like glory. It feels like captivity. For Jaleel Ahmad White, The boy the world knew as the eccentric Steve Urkel. The 1990s were a decade of laughter he could never quite hear for himself. On screen, he was a cultural phenomenon, the clumsy yet endearing genius who turned Family Matters into one of ABC's highest-rated shows. Off-screen, he was a teenager whose life no longer belonged to him. Every grin, every awkward shuffle, every squeaky line had to be perfect. The nation adored Urkel, but behind those thick glasses was a child staring back at a reflection he could no longer recognize. His mother, Gail White, served as both guardian and gatekeeper. Determined to protect her son from the darker corners of Hollywood, she monitored his image with unwavering precision. Haircuts, wardrobe, even gym visits were tightly regulated. Anything that risked breaking the illusion of Urkel was forbidden. Gail fought fiercely for his contracts and safety, but her control also built invisible walls around his childhood. While other teenagers experimented with self-expression, Jaleel's every gesture was dictated by a fictional character. To maintain America's favorite nerd, he had to surrender his own adolescence. His days began under studio lights and ended long after laughter tracks faded, leaving him exhausted yet unable to step away. The work itself was relentless. 6 days a week, scripts changed daily, and each take demanded exaggerated emotion that drained more than energy it consumed identity. Stage lights glared through his thick lenses, leaving his eyes aching. He once confessed that even when he removed the costume, he couldn't escape the mannerisms. The high-pitched tone would slip into casual conversation as if the boundary between Jaleel and Urkel had dissolved. Fame had turned him into a living brand, but that brand no longer resembled the boy behind it. The audience saw comedy. He felt claustrophobia. With every magazine cover and cereal box that bore his face, the paradox deepened. The louder the applause grew, the quieter his private world became. Friends saw him less as Jaleel and more as the character who had conquered television. Invitations to parties disappeared. Classmates felt awkward around Urkel. The more famous he became, the lonelier he felt. Even moments of pride came laced with fatigue. He once said in an interview, "If anyone ever sees me as Urkel again, just shoot me." It wasn't arrogance. It was exhaustion from living a life scripted by others. Behind his smile hid a silent plea for normalcy, a wish for one day when he could simply exist without performing. By the time Family Matters ended in 1998, Jaleel White was only 22, but carried the weight of a career twice his age. The applause had faded, but the identity crisis remained. He entered UCLA to study film, seeking to rebuild the person fame had erased. Yet freedom didn't come easily. Hollywood still saw the nerd, not the man. The price of his childhood triumph was clear to millions. He was unforgettable, but to himself he had become a stranger. The brilliance that made him a legend had also stolen the very thing he longed for most, his own sense of self. The first shadow, the Bridget Hardy scandal, 2010-2012. By the time the new decade began, Jaleel White had outgrown the suspenders and squeaky laugh that defined his youth. Yet the spotlight refused to let him disappear quietly. In 2009, he welcomed a daughter, Samaya, with actress and model Bridget Hardy. For a moment, it seemed the former child star had finally found balance, a family, a slower pace, and a chance to redefine himself beyond Steve Urkel. But the serenity did not last. Beneath the surface of their picture-perfect smiles, tensions brewed. Two creative lives collided, his consumed by the echoes of Hollywood, hers frustrated by the sacrifices that motherhood demanded. What began as disagreements over work and parenting soon spiraled into resentment. And by 2010, the relationship was fractured beyond repair. 2 years later, the private breakup became public devastation. In April 2012, Star magazine published an exclusive interview with Bridget Hardy, claiming she had been assaulted by Jaleel during a heated argument. Her account was chilling: shattered objects, bruises, and the fear of not making it out alive. Within hours, the story spread across entertainment sites like Radar Online People and E! News. Headlines screamed betrayal. The same actor who had embodied family values was now accused of violence. For audiences who had grown up idolizing Urkel's awkward charm, the contrast was unthinkable. Within days, Jaleel's name became a trending topic for all the wrong reasons. The timing of the revelation only deepened the chaos. Jaleel was then competing on Dancing with the Stars, a rare comeback opportunity after years away from the spotlight. Suddenly, every dance routine, every interview carried an unspoken tension. Cameras no longer followed the nostalgic star. They followed a man under suspicion. Yet through the noise, he spoke calmly but firmly, denying the allegations. There was no police report, no case, no truth to any of it, he told people in a follow-up statement. He suggested that the accusations were strategically released to damage his image during custody discussions and his resurgence on television. His words sounded weary, almost defensive, not just a rebuttal, but the voice of someone who had already lost faith in public forgiveness. No official investigation was ever opened, and no charges were filed. Still, in Hollywood, perception is often more powerful than proof. The court of opinion had already passed judgment. Endorsement deals dissolved, talk show invitations quietly vanished, and the hopeful momentum from Dancing with the Stars collapsed overnight. Online debates split fans down the middle. Some defended him as a victim of tabloid sensationalism, while others believed the reports were part of a long-hidden truth. For every article that questioned the evidence, another painted him as a fallen icon, a man consumed by the same fame that once fed him. In the years that followed, Jaleel chose silence over spectacle. He avoided interviews, posting only brief messages about fatherhood and resilience. Those who knew him said the scandal had changed him, not in fury, but in caution. He learned that even without conviction, reputation can crumble under rumors' weight. To this day, he has never spoken ill of Bridget Hardy, perhaps recognizing that public battles only deepen private scars. His darkest secret was not guilt, but grief, the heartbreak of watching a lifetime of goodwill evaporate in the space of a headline. From beloved sitcom Son to a man defending his name, Jaleel White had crossed the line from laughter to survival, and the world would never see him quite the same way again. Behind the scenes, Clash with Joe, Marie Payton, 1997. By the late 1990s, Family Matters was no longer just a sitcom, it was a television institution. For nearly a decade, Jaleel White had transformed Steve Urkel from a one-off side character into the heart of the series, driving ratings merchandise and pop culture relevance. But by 1997, as he turned 21, the dynamic on set began to shift. The boy everyone had once protected had become the show's center of gravity, and with that power came tension. Crew members whispered about exhaustion, long hours, and creative fatigue. Under the laughter of the live audience, pressure brewed quietly until it finally erupted during the filming of an episode titled Original Gangsta Dog. What happened that day would remain buried for decades, until one of his co-stars finally broke the silence. That co-star was Jo Marie Payton, who played the formidable matriarch, Harriet Winslow. Known among her peers as Mama Payton, she had a reputation for discipline and integrity both on and off set. When she read the script for the episode, she reportedly objected to a particular scene where Urkel, disguised as a streetwise alter ego, displayed behavior she considered too aggressive for a family-oriented series. To her, it risked undermining the wholesome message the show had built for years. But Jaleel, confident and perhaps too accustomed to deference, disagreed sharply. He believed the scene would show Urkel's growth a new layer of complexity for the character audiences loved. Words turned to shouting, and according to witnesses, he lost his composure. When Payton urged him to calm down, he allegedly retorted with a challenge that shocked everyone present. As the argument escalated, Darius McCrary, who portrayed Eddie Winslow, stepped between them to defuse the situation. He held Jaleel back, urging him to breathe and walk away, while other cast members stood frozen in disbelief. The set, once a place of laughter and inside jokes, had turned into a silent standoff. Production resumed eventually, but the air was thick with unspoken resentment. For Payton, the moment crossed a line. Soon after, she requested to leave the show and another actress was quietly brought in to take her place. At the time, fans were told it was a creative decision, but insiders knew it stemmed from that altercation. The studio buried the story. Entertainment magazines never caught wind of it. In an age before social media secrets stayed hidden for a while, it wasn't until 2022, in an interview with Entertainment Tonight and later with People, that Jo Marie finally spoke about the confrontation. Her tone was not vengeful, but weary. She recalled the incident as a symptom of a deeper problem, a young actor overwhelmed by fame, indulged by producers too afraid to lose their star attraction. He was no longer that sweet little boy, she said. He was powerful, and no one told him no. The revelation stunned longtime viewers who had believed Family Matters mirrored the harmony it portrayed on screen. To learn that the Winslows had fractured behind the camera was for many a quiet heartbreak. Jaleel's response came months later. In a brief comment, he expressed deep respect for Jo Marie and declined to reopen old wounds. He said, "I'll always see her as a second mother, choosing diplomacy over denial." The restraint suggested maturity, perhaps the very growth that had eluded him in his youth. Then in 2023, something remarkable happened. During the nostalgic fan event, 90s Con, the two finally reunited. As cameras flashed, Jaleel approached Jo Marie on stage and embraced her. The crowd erupted in applause, the tension of decades dissolving in one heartfelt gesture. That moment did not erase the past, but it reframed it. What had once symbolized anger and ego now became a lesson in reconciliation. Behind the laughter of Family Matters lay real emotions, pride, frustration, and the painful transformation from child actor to adult man. The clash with Jo Marie Payton was not simply an outburst. It was a mirror reflecting the cost of growing up under unrelenting light. For Jaleel White, that day in 1997 became both a scar and a milestone, the beginning of understanding that power without humility can break even the strongest family on screen or off. The outburst on the Dancing with the Stars. Stage 2012. In 2012, Jaleel White stood on the edge of a long-awaited comeback. After years of trying to escape the shadow of Steve Urkel, the character that had made him famous, he stepped onto the glittering stage of Dancing with the Stars Season 14. It was his chance at reinvention, a chance to remind the world that he was more than the nerdy boy with suspenders and a nasal laugh. The audience greeted him with nostalgia, cheering for the man who once made them laugh. Paired with Australian professional dancer Kim Johnson, a two-time champion known for her grace and patience, Jaleel seemed poised to win hearts again. Their early performances radiated charm, mixing precision with personality. Judges praised his rhythm, and for a brief moment Hollywood appeared ready to forgive and embrace him once more. But behind the sparkly costumes and wide smiles, pressure simmered. Training for Dancing with the Stars was a grueling experience, 5 to 6 hours a day. Strict choreography, endless cameras recording every stumble. According to reports later cited by CBS News and E! News, Jaleel's determination often crossed into frustration. He wanted perfection to prove he was still relevant in an industry that had long since moved on. The breaking point came during a rehearsal for a samba routine. Midway through the sequence, he accidentally stepped on Kim's foot. She reacted instinctively with a quick, "Ow," a harmless exclamation, but something in him snapped. He lashed out, accusing her of exaggerating and embarrassing him. Witnesses recalled his face flushed with anger, his voice echoing across the studio. Kim, shocked and tearful, left the rehearsal space while crew members tried to calm the tension. Fellow contestants Mark Ballas and Donald Driver intervened, stepping in to de-escalate the confrontation. Mark, a seasoned professional known for his composure, placed a hand on Jaleel's shoulder in an attempt to defuse the situation, but the moment only grew more awkward. Later production sources told People that the altercation had left the atmosphere uncomfortable and tense. The story leaked almost immediately, spreading through entertainment outlets like wildfire. Headlines described a meltdown, and anonymous insiders painted Jaleel as volatile and difficult. Within days, the incident became one of the most talked-about stories of the season. The public, still remembering past controversies, saw the outburst as confirmation of his temper, another sign that the beloved child star had turned unpredictable. When the storm reached its peak, Jaleel decided to respond. Sitting down for an interview on ABC, he denied yelling at anyone, calling the reports completely blown out of proportion. He insisted that fatigue and constant filming had magnified a simple misunderstanding. "We're all under stress," he explained, praising Kim as a wonderful partner and teacher. His composure on air contrasted sharply with the tabloid narrative, but the damage had already been done. Fans debated fiercely online, some defending him as a victim of media exaggeration, others convinced they had seen the real Jaleel. Even as he continued performing, the joy had drained from his expressions. During their next live performance, a Roomba about forgiveness and connection, he danced with a quiet intensity that many saw as a public apology in motion. By the season's end, Jaleel White had survived elimination, but his spirit was exhausted. He withdrew from interviews, posting a short message on social media. "When the world reminds you of your mistakes, remind yourself why you started." Then he disappeared from the spotlight once again. The darkest secret of his comeback was not the argument itself, but what it revealed: that beneath his polished charm was a man still haunted by pressure, perfectionism, and the fear of being misunderstood. Dancing with the Stars was supposed to be his rebirth, yet it became another mirror reflecting the struggle he could never quite escape: how to be loved without being consumed by the expectations of the world that once made him famous. The difficult star. Power and isolation on the Family Matters set. Behind the warm laughter and family-friendly lessons of Family Matters, a different drama quietly unfolded when the cameras stopped rolling. As the series grew into one of ABC's most successful sitcoms of the 1990s, Jaleel White transformed from a young supporting actor into its irreplaceable centerpiece. His portrayal of Steve Urkel not only saved the show from cancellation, but also turned it into a cultural phenomenon. Yet the more central he became, the more the balance of power shifted behind the scenes. Directors and writers began to tread carefully around him, aware that upsetting their young star could jeopardize the show's stability. What started as a story about the Winslow family had evolved into a production orbiting around a single personality, and at the center of that orbit stood not only Jaleel himself, but also his mother, Gail White, who was as protective as she was powerful. Gail wasn't a passive parent observing from the sidelines. As Jaleel's manager, she was present on set every day, overseeing wardrobe choices, reviewing lines, and even intervening in production meetings. Colleagues later recalled how her maternal vigilance often crossed into creative control. If a scene made her son look foolish, she would demand rewrites. If a director raised his voice, she would step in before Jaleel could answer. To some, her involvement was a sign of genuine care in a cutthroat industry that often exploited young performers. To others, it was suffocating, a constant reminder that every interaction with the actor came with supervision. Producers quietly admitted that the crew had learned to communicate with Jaleel through intermediaries to avoid conflict. Over time, that distance eroded the friendly, collaborative atmosphere that had once defined the Family Matters set. Rumors spread among the production staff describing Jaleel as untouchable. It wasn't arrogance, at least not entirely. It was the result of years of being treated as both the star and the child who needed shielding. Some cast members began to feel alienated, unsure whether they were working with a colleague or a brand protected by an iron curtain. Anonymous insiders later told entertainment outlets that scenes would be halted mid-shoot if Gail or her son disapproved of a comedic direction. In an interview years later, Jaleel admitted that the dynamic had isolated him. "People thought I was difficult," he reflected, "but really I was just trying to survive in a world that didn't treat kids like kids." His acknowledgement carried both humility and regret, a recognition that protection had come at the cost of connection. As adulthood mellowed him, Jaleel sought to repair what had been fractured. In his 2022 memoir, he confessed that fame had inflated his pride and blurred his perspective. He described reaching out to former co-stars like Kelly Shanigan-Williams, who had played Laura Winslow, and Jo Marie Payton, the family matriarch, to reconcile. Their relationships had endured years of silence and unspoken tension. But time, as it often does, softened resentment. Jaleel wrote candidly that success without gratitude meant little, and that forgiveness, both given and received, was the only way forward. For the first time, he publicly acknowledged how his mother's influence, while well-intentioned, had shaped the strained environment that surrounded his teenage fame. In 2023, that healing came to life before thousands of fans at 90s Con. When Jaleel and Jo Marie Payton met on stage, decades of rumor and resentment seemed to dissolve in a single moment. Cameras captured him embracing her tightly as the audience erupted in applause. For longtime viewers, it was more than nostalgia. It was closure. Behind that hug lay years of lessons about pride, family, and the high price of youthful stardom. The boy, once labeled hard to work with, had finally learned that humility, not control, sustains respect. The legend of Urkel might have made him famous, but it was Jaleel White's journey toward forgiveness that made him human again. The Hood Controversy. Words that sparked a backlash. 2021. By 2021, Jaleel White had reached a stage in life defined more by reflection than fame. After decades of scrutiny, he had found peace in revisiting the past, not through sitcoms or interviews, but through storytelling. His memoir, Growing Up. Urkel had become a heartfelt attempt to reclaim his narrative and share the human cost of early stardom. During a book tour event in Delaware, however, one offhand comment would reignite the very chaos he hoped to leave behind. In response to a question about the legacy of family matters within African-American television, Jaleel said, "The black community never really appreciated family matters because it wasn't hood." His tone was calm, even analytical, but the phrasing landed with a thud. Within hours, the quote spread across social media, stripped of context and weaponized into outrage. What he had meant as cultural commentary was read as condescension, a perceived slight against the communities that had once supported him. The backlash was immediate. Twitter erupted with hashtags like #UrkelOutOfTouch, and the story quickly gained traction on entertainment outlets such as Hot New Hip Hop Complex and The Root. Many users accused him of reinforcing class stereotypes, implying that hood culture, a term rooted in the lived experiences of countless Black Americans, was something to look down on. Comment threads filled with disappointment and disbelief. "We loved Family Matters," one user wrote, "but don't tell us we're not real because we're not middle class." Others questioned whether years in Hollywood had distanced Jaleel from his roots. The criticism wasn't just about a sentence. It was about identity, belonging, and how public figures navigate language in an age where every word lives forever online. The storm forced Jaleel into immediate damage control. Within days, he appeared on the Higher Learning podcast to address the controversy directly. His voice, measured yet remorseful, carried the exhaustion of someone who had seen this cycle before. The misquote, the outrage, the apology. "I used the wrong word," he admitted. "What I meant was that Family Matters didn't get the same recognition as shows that focused on street culture. I never meant to insult anyone or imply that one experience is better than another." He went further, acknowledging the beauty, creativity, and resilience born from urban life. His apology was sincere, but the internet's memory was long. For some, it was redemption. For others, it was too late. Even so, his willingness to confront the mistake publicly contrasted with the silence that once defined his career. As the debate evolved, cultural critics began exploring the deeper meaning behind the moment. Publications like The Atlantic analyzed the comment as part of a broader phenomenon, what one writer called the paradox of the 90s black artist. Performers like Jaleel, who rose to fame in shows promoting stability and optimism, often found themselves alienated from modern audiences who demanded more raw, authentic reflections of black life. Scholars argued that his remark wasn't simply ignorance, but an echo of that generational tension. Family Matters represented upward mobility, while newer viewers sought stories of struggle and survival. In this light, Jaleel's words revealed not malice, but a disconnect, a man caught between eras of representation. In the months that followed, he withdrew from interviews, choosing introspection over engagement. He focused instead on community work, mentoring young creatives on emotional wellness and media awareness. The Hood controversy became another scar on a career defined by both triumph and turbulence. Yet within that moment of misstep lay a powerful truth: language carries history, and even unintended words can reopen old wounds. For Jaleel White, the lesson was harsh, but necessary. The man who once made America laugh had again become its cautionary tale, a reminder that in the digital age, redemption requires not just talent, but empathy and precision in every syllable spoken. Peace and redemption. Life beyond Steve Urkel. As the curtain of fame drew to a gentler close, Jaleel White entered his late 40s with a quiet dignity that fame had once denied him. Decades earlier, his life had been measured by studio lights, fan letters, and relentless attention. Now it was defined by early mornings, family breakfasts, and laughter shared not with audiences, but with his daughter, Samaya. The boy who once lived inside a character finally found a home within himself. He no longer chased the applause of millions or the impossible perfection of past glories. Instead, he embraced simplicity: school drop-offs, morning jogs, and unhurried conversations that reminded him that joy didn't have to be televised. The man who had once been a symbol of America's laughter had become a quiet lesson in self-preservation. In interviews, Jaleel often speaks about the liberation that comes with slowing down. After years of living as a headline, he learned to value invisibility, to enjoy existing without performance. He spends much of his time mentoring young actors who are just beginning their journeys through Hollywood's unforgiving terrain. To them, he speaks candidly about the psychological toll of early fame, the anxiety of perfection, the loneliness of constant praise, and the danger of losing identity in the pursuit of approval. Mental wellness has become his new mission, one that gives purpose to the scars left by his earlier experiences. He frequently tells these artists that success without peace is an illusion, a truth he paid dearly to learn. Through his talks and workshops, Jaleel transformed from a cautionary tale into a voice of wisdom, someone who knows that healing is not about erasing the past, but living with it gently. Fatherhood has deepened that understanding. Though he rarely discusses Samaya publicly, his affection for her shapes every decision. He once said that becoming a parent taught him the difference between being famous and being present. With her, he isn't a celebrity or a character, he's simply dad. Their time together, reading, cooking, or watching old cartoons, reminds him that legacy isn't measured by awards or ratings, but by the love that remains when the spotlight fades. Those quiet moments of connection have given him something the entertainment industry never could: unconditional acceptance. Where the world once saw him through the lens of Steve Urkel, his daughter sees only the man behind the smile. Now, approaching 50, Jaleel carries a calm confidence that contrasts sharply with the restless ambition of his youth. He occasionally acts or produces, but only when the project aligns with his values. More often, he chooses authenticity over visibility, turning down opportunities that demand he revisit his past persona. "I've learned that not every door that opens is meant to be walked through," he once remarked in an interview, a statement that encapsulates his evolution. He no longer measures success by public approval, but by peace of mind. For a man once consumed by reinvention, the greatest victory has been learning to stand still, to exist without needing to prove anything to anyone. In the end, Jaleel White's story is not one of tragedy, but of transcendence. He has lived through adoration, scandal, reinvention, and grace, emerging not broken, but whole. The shadow of Steve Urkel, once both a prison and a pedestal, no longer defines him. Instead, it serves as a reminder of where he began and how far he has come. His journey speaks to the beauty of acceptance, of letting go of what the world expects, and embracing who you truly are. After years of noise, he has found silence, After decades of performance, he has found peace. In the end, Jaleel White's journey forces us to ask an uncomfortable question. Can a man ever truly escape the character that made him famous? His story, from laughter to loneliness and finally peace, reminds us that brilliance often carries an invisible cost. Some see redemption, others see retreat, but perhaps both are true. At nearly 50, he stands as a symbol of resilience, not perfection, a legend reborn through acceptance. Was Steve Urkel his blessing or his curse? The debate continues here on Legends of Black Excellence, where every story still asks what greatness truly means.